Hello and welcome to the Shiny Bees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host Jo Milmine and this is episode 121, Holiday Knitting.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright.
Hello and welcome into another episode of the podcast. Hello, how are you? I am Jo Milmine, I'm your host today, and if you are a new listener, welcome in to episode 121, and if you're back again for the 121st plus time, then thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you coming back and hanging out with me on the podcast again today. And today you've got almost like a continuation, an encore, if you will, of our guest from last time, Leona Jane Page of Fluff in Dundee, who is an absolute delight, I'm sure you'll agree. And we had such a great chat when we did the last episode. We were talking about Rusty Ferret and her transition from yarn shop owner into yarn shop owner and hand dyer. And it was quite a relaxed chat and we had a really good conversation, and actually towards the end we went off onto a completely different subject that was such a good chat. I thought I would cut it out of that episode and put it into this one because it felt like it was a different topic and something we could make into a different piece of content and would be better sort of by itself in its own episode. So that's what I did. And that subject was holiday knitting. And in that last interview, Leona was talking about how she was going off to New Zealand and Japan. That was last Christmas because it was quite a long time between actually recording that and putting the episode out. But she was talking about her holiday or her travel knitting that she had planned because those flights were quite long. So she said they're 12 or 14 hours a piece and she had a couple of them to do because it's the other side of the planet. So she was busy thinking about obviously the journey, and then when she got there, what sort of stuff she was going to be knitting, because she was going to be doing a lot of travelling around when she was there. Now, as you will know, if you watch my stories or I've been listening for a while, I recently spent the whole summer in China and last summer in China as well. And during that time, we did a lot of travelling around. And generally, if I'm going anywhere interesting or seeing anything that looks fun or give you a bit of a giggle, that's what I put on my stories. I don't like to take it too seriously over on Instagram, but that's the place where I'll put my thoughts or quick kind of witty comment or something interesting that I've seen. And part of that involved a lot of travelling around as well. So it seemed like quite a good way to kind of pull two sort of streams of consciousness that we've had together, both mine and Leona's chatting about it, and mine by itself in terms of what do I do when I go travelling? Because I do travel a lot. I do fly a lot, travel a lot, I'm on planes a lot. Trains, automobiles, the lot, and I love to have something to do because especially in the UK, public transport is massively unreliable and you quite often end up sat on your backside doing something unexpected like I did last week, and that's another story for another time. But basically I love to have something on hand at all times just in case I end up stuck somewhere, because I hate being bored, like in terms of sitting there wasting time that I could be doing something else. And knitting something you can do everywhere and you're not worrying about keeping your battery alive or anything else like that. You can just knit and it's fine. And so I'll always like to have that kind of in case of emergency break glass knitting project for just such an eventuality. So I put together a few of my thoughts initially about holiday knitting and travel knitting in particular. And then we'll catch up with Leona again and she can talk about her planning process and what she thought about what she was going to take with her to New Zealand and Japan and a bit of chatter around that. So grab yourself a brew and whatever you're currently working on or doing whilst you are listening to me today, and we will crack on with the show. So holiday knitting then, travel knitting in general. I don't know about you, but if you're anything like me, and I suspect you might be a little bit, then the arrival or the prospect of a long journey or a holiday or some kind of travel usually brings up two big questions. Number one, what knitting am I going to take with me? And how much is too much when it comes to packing your holiday yarn? And number two, what clothes am I going to take? So generally for me, the packing of clothing, etc., is a 20-minute job. I used to be in the Air Force. I'm very good at packing to go away places. I travel a lot. So I don't do this thing where I've packed my suitcase a week in advance and it sits in the hall. That is not in any way something that I do, particularly for clothes. Like I have a set routine, and if it's not packed in 20 minutes, then the rule is you don't need it. Just buy whatever you've not put in there, because if you've not used, if you can't get it in there in 20 minutes, then you probably don't need it. You won't have used it for ages. So that's my kind of rule for packing when it comes to clothes. But when it comes to the knitting, I feel like it needs to be something that's a little bit more carefully considered, because there's a certain amount I find of like knitter's anxiety that goes along with holiday knitting and travel knitting and going somewhere and being separated geographically from your stash. And it's something that does deserve a little bit more than 20 minutes of attention, I find, because that's in no way the same thing. We're not talking every day, like clothes, toothbrushes, etc. We're not talking that. We're talking something seriously. We're talking about your knitting projects. So that does bear a little bit more consideration. And I certainly spend more time thinking about what I'm going to pack to knit than I do about what I'm going to pack to wear and survive with, because, it's quite easy to find something to survive with. When it comes to your knitting, it's not always easy to find a yarn store or find the bits and pieces that you need. So I find that tends to take the following kind of form. Number one, you think, well, I'll take that because I'm working on that at the moment and it'd be good to get it finished. Which goes into, is that going to be enough knitting? Which rolls into, but what if I get bored of knitting on that garment? So I need some other knitting as well. 2, everyone needs a skein of emergency sock yarn to knit socks with, so let me pack the DPNs. 2, I've been wanting to knit this for ages, and now is the perfect time to sit down with this 80 million page pattern and a shed load of beads and start knitting it, because I won't have anything else to think about on holiday, and clearly I'll have plenty of time just to sit there and knit. 2, oh wow, deep stash. We definitely need some deep stash yarn. And before you know it, you've packed half of your suitcase with actual yarn for 2 weeks or whatever, and not even your jammers have made it in there. And I mean, you could be knitting a pair of jammers, like you could be, but probably not in the time before now and bedtime. And you certainly won't have blocked them, let's be honest. If you were going to knit a pair of pyjamas, they won't be blocked. You want to photograph them, and do you really want to be crinkling them up in bed before you've done all of that? I don't know if you do. So it's one of those things that's always kind of, it results in some agonising decisions for me in terms of what do you take with you and how much is enough when it comes to travel knitting. Now I have some favourites, and my kind of 3 go-to things, depending on the seasonality and what mood I'm in terms of what knitting I want to be doing, are either, number 1, a 1 skein shawl, 4mm needles, in case of emergency, break glass, minimum effort, minimum memorising, just a really simple garter or stocking stitch shawl with some kind of interesting part to it at some stage, whether it's a little bit of maybe short rows and a bit of shaping, or whether it's a little bit of beading at the end, because I do quite like to bead on trains. I've got to think about doing beaded knittings on trains. I will bead in ridiculous places that are not that practical. Like if you drop them on the train, the beads, that'd be a big problem, but it's never seemed to have happened, even though I've been known to do it with a can of gin as well. But a 1 skein shawl as my first one, socks, self-striping usually as my second, or probably my third choice, to be honest. I've not been a big sock knitter until very recently, where I've picked them back up again. I used to like knitting them a lot, and then I kind of went off socks for a bit, round about the time I discovered Magic Loop and how boring it is, and kind of went off socks. And since, in fact, it was only literally a couple of weeks ago, I cast on a pair of self-striping socks onto wooden DPNs, my original favourite, and I'm well back into it now, and I've done loads of knitting on those. And the third thing that I will quite often take as a project is some kind of simple repeating stitch pattern garment. So if I'm working on sleeves on a lush, because usually that's all I ever knit is a lush, or the body, or something big where you can just rock back and forth, knit the stocking stitch and till it measures a certain size and then change to rib or whatever. Anything like that that's pretty easy and doesn't really require you to look at a pattern. That's the key thing for me, is something that doesn't require you to look at a pattern. Then they're my kind of top 3 choices for something for travel knitting, because it depends on where you are. If you are, say, on a plane for like 10, 11 hours, then it's kind of okay, depending on what class you're sitting in, whether you've got small people either side, so you've got a bit more elbow room. But something where you're sitting, you've got a bit of space, then a garment can be okay, because you've got it all in your lap still, as long as it's not massive. I'm not saying take an Afghan or anything like that, but it quite often isn't that big still. And you can get away with doing that, and you don't need to keep getting your pattern out and looking all the time. It's quite mindless, and that can be a good way to feel like you've done something. But equally, I find if you're going to be getting up and down quite often, like say you get on the tube or whatever, or on the metro, and there isn't a long amount of time in between getting on and getting off, I prefer the smaller things like the socks or the one skein shawl as something that you can quickly just pull the needles back through and stuff back in your bag, and it's quite small, so it doesn't involve you having to rearrange anything in your bag to get it in. And again, they're quite often things that you don't need a pattern for. It's just round and round or backwards and forwards on the old needles to get that done. So they're my kind of top 3 favourite types of pattern to do when I'm travel knitting. But as I said, I don't discount any knitting really, and I will quite often do beaded knitting and shawl knitting, because Boo Knits is my favourite beaded knitting designer. She designs the most beautiful, intricate beaded shawls, but I find her patterns so easy to follow, and the pattern repeats are all kind of similar. They're all like kind of 16, 18 stitch pattern repeats. I don't find that so challenging to have as a train knitting project or anything else, because it is repetition. And again, if you sat there for a couple of hours, if you're going into London or wherever, or you're going up to Beijing, then you sat there and you can get your tray table out, and you can do it quite easily and have your one bit of printed out paper. I'm a pattern printer, so I like to have the paper version printed out, and I don't use washi tape. I use ordinary post-it notes to mark where I am on the pattern, and I find that works quite well, even, like I say, even if you've got some gin. So they're like my top 3 go-to type patterns or projects that I will work on when I'm doing some travel and I want to get some stuff done. I think it's quite an interesting balancing act really, in terms of you want to have something that's enough interest in what you're knitting, but not so much that you need to concentrate on it and keep referring to a pattern all the time, because that can be awkward when you're traveling. It's okay just to sit there and move your hands just in front of you and you're not doing big movements. When you're constantly moving around trying to check patterns and things, that can be a little bit more tricky. I also find that when you're in the car, you need to be a little bit more careful, or on a Virgin Pendolino. I bloody hate Pendolino trains. Like, stick your hands up, tweet me, send me a message, DM me if you hate Pendolino trains. Pendolino trains, for those of you in North America who maybe haven't been on a Virgin Pendolino, are these hideous trains where, in order to make the trains go faster, because all of our train lines are Victorian, so they were built for steam, not for several 100 mile an hour train, well not several, over 100 mile an hour trains. So in order to allow them to go faster around the corners, they sort of the tilting trains. So you'll be riding along and then the train will tilt like you're in some kind of fast jet, which is fine if it doesn't make you feel like vomiting. But for me, and I know a lot of other people, I know Liz Greenside Knits, who's a big train rider, she also hates the Pendolinos. We've talked about this at length. And they can make you feel really sick. But it depends which way you are going, because if you're going down to London, the railway line seems to be a lot straighter. And it's not as bad, I find. but that's usually a shorter journey as well. If you're going north and you're going through the Lake District, in particular, that can be it can make you feel really quite rough. And especially at night, I hate doing that journey at night on the Pendolino because you can't even look out at the horizon. It's like being on a boat. It's horrible. So yeah, you do need to give some kind of consideration to what sort of journey you're doing and where you're going to be sitting. So I tend to have stuff that I don't have to look at or check or count stitches on if I'm going anywhere in a car, because I do feel sick in the car as well if I'm reading or looking at stuff. And also if I'm on the Pendolino, it needs to be something I don't have to look at, which is where these nice kind of stockinette or garter stitch, one skein shawls and pairs of socks really sort of come into their own, because you don't have to look and you can feel everything with your fingers. And a lot of it, it's kind of like muscle memory really. You don't even look at what you're doing, and quite often other people will be watching you knit transfix and you're not even looking at what you're doing, you're looking at someone else and then feel them looking at you and you're like, staring at me for, and they just get kind of hypnotized by the knitting. So something that I think is important to bear in mind is like what sort of travel you are going to be doing and whether you're going to be able to look at where you're going or whether you need to be looking down and counting stitches. I don't like to have anything too fiddly. As I said, I don't like to have anything where if you get nudged or drop a stitch that it's going to be a lot of fixing. So no lace really too much on travel knitting projects for the actual act of travelling. If I'm going to be sat on a sun lounger, I'd probably consider it, but nothing too fiddly for the actual knitting because of if I need to fix this, it could be a little bit awkward. And the other thing I also like to bear in mind when picking a project is the idea, and it was Poke to Goblin, Alessandra, who introduced me to this idea of taking a project with you or a couple of projects with you that need finishing, but you can't really be bothered, but you'll finish because there's nothing else to knit on instead. Which is, it's a good logic really, because I mean, in the absence of anything else to knit, and if it's a choice between not knitting and knitting, then you're just going to finish the projects, aren't you? She's a little bit more hardcore than me. I'd just be like, right, get me a yarn shop. I want something else to knit. I don't want to knit this. But she's really good. She actually sits there and does knit them and finish them. So that's another thing you could probably consider when you are picking your travel knitting, is whether there's something that you would like to get finished that you won't finish if there's other pretties in the way at home. But in the absence of anything else, you will get it done. So they're kind of like my thoughts around, overview thoughts on holiday knitting. And we're going to hear from me and Leona in a minute about talking about some of the projects that she had in mind to work on and some of the things that she thinks about when she is planning her travel knitting, and a bit of chit chat around that. But I'm really curious to hear what you think as well. So please do definitely get in touch. Get into the Facebook group, the community over on Facebook, or DM me or whatever on Insta and let me know what your kind of go-to strategies are for choosing travel knitting and what kind of projects you like to go for, because I think it'd be really interesting to hear from the community and hear about what you like to use. So what I think we'll do now is we'll go back to the future and we'll go listen to the rest of the conversation from the interview with Leona that I spoke to last week, and talk about her kind of holiday knitting plans and what things she thinks about when she's planning her travel knitting. So I hope you will enjoy that.
I'm stressing, as a knitter does, because I'm going away for a month and it's a lot of flying time because we're going to New Zealand. I'm really stressing about what projects to bring.
Ooh.
Like I just can't. I feel like I can't even process it just now, and I'm like, well, I want to knit this and this and this, but what's plain knitting? What's walkabout knitting? What's sitting in the evening knitting? Is it okay to bring 6 projects for a month? Like, is that ridiculous?
I think you always need backup projects. I think you always need at least 3 times as many as what you think you need, because if you only take one and you don't want to knit it, then you don't knit.
Yeah.
Well, I don't, I'm stubborn.
I completely agree with you. There are yarn shops in New Zealand, but I want to knit from my stash.
Yeah.
Like I feel like this is the time I'm going to allow myself. That sounds really terrible, but like I do a lot of sample knitting for the shop. And I feel that there's a lot of yarn in my stash that I really want to work with that has been waiting for so long, that I'm going to say when I'm away on holiday, I'm going to do some stash knitting. Because they deserve to be used.
They do, and that's a good point about stash knitting and taking it away on holiday, is that like you're knitting part of your holiday into the yarn, into the work that you're making, like you can remember it.
Yeah, precisely. And it's just, I don't know, like, I'm not stash busting or anything. I just feel that, as I said, there's just a lot of yarn in there that I bought with the intention of knitting something. And it deserves to be knitted into that thing because it's so lovely. It doesn't deserve to be sat in a drawer. So yeah, I think so. And I mean, what my flights are like 10 hours and then 14 hours. Oh. And then you've got all the airport hanging about time.
I'm thinking a shawl for the aeroplane.
I was thinking of doing a fade shawl for while I'm in New Zealand.
That's like a blanket, dude.
Well, I know, but it's got enough interest that it's not dull, but it's not like lace or anything, so that I can sit at night time and just knit away on it, if that makes sense, because we're staying with Mark's uncle, who has 4 children, and 2 dogs and a wife, and several guinea pigs and things. So I feel like I know the evenings will be chaos, so I need something that I don't need to focus on. So I thought the fade would be quite a good one.
Yeah, but the more you add to it, like it's going to get heavier and heavier as your holiday goes on.
I know.
It's not going to fit in your handbag like you want a one skein thing.
Oh no, but there'll be a one skein thing for when we're out and about.
But then what, you end up with like 5 half-finished projects?
Yeah, well, I know, this is the stress.
It's not stress, just pick one.
It's too hard.
Just pick one and then knit on that till it's done.
Oh, but Jo, it's too hard.
Yeah, it's not though, because it's like you're on holiday. Like, there's no way I could possibly do that in real life. Like, I have at least 5 or 6 projects that I'm actively working on, which is why it takes me forever to knit things.
Well, yeah.
But when I go on holiday, it's like I'm a different person because you're somewhere else. So, like, I am a person who only knits on one thing. So I only take that one thing with me.
Okay.
Like, that's the one thing. Like, I take more projects because, like, I went away last week and I didn't take DPNs, and I needed DPNs to make an I-cord so I could make Jane Morrison's shawl, and I didn't have them, so I had the yarn but I didn't have the DPNs, so I couldn't cast that on, and I'd finished my Henslow, so I'd cast that off, and then I was like, what am I going to do? And I'd taken some emergency yarn, which was some of Helen's yarn, Wool Kitchen Helen's yarn.
Nice.
Urban Hints, so it was already caked up and it was already ready. It'd been on my bedside table for ages, and I was like, right, I'm going to move that and take it with me.
Yeah.
As emergency yarn, and obviously I've always got 4mm needles because they're emergency needles. And I've ended up casting on another Kunya, Claire Devine's pattern that she did for TGS.
That was one of the ones that is sitting that was going to be coming with me.
It's a super good one because the beads are right at the end.
Yeah, exactly. It's been caked and everything. I've got a lovely skein of Easy Knits. I think it was one of his ghosts. So it's like natural with green. It's quite wild. But I just really wanted to knit another Kunya.
Yeah, I really like it. Really wearable. I wear my gold on a lot because I did an actual golden Kunya.
Well, you have to.
Kunya.
You say it properly because I have never been in South Africa.
It's Zulu. It is Zulu, isn't it?
I'm not.
Is it Zulu? It's Swahili. It's not Swahili for one. No, it's Swahili for one. Swahili for one is Mojo.
Okay.
I know that because my mother-in-law's dog is called Mojo.
Oh.
Dog number 1.
Is he the Sheltie as well?
He's a Sheltie, yes.
Yeah.
Matching my Shelties.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, very cute.
How are your puppies?
They're good. They're good. Wumble's 10 now. He's old. Yeah.
Arthur's 11. I know, right? I just think, like, if Arthur was my child, if I'd had a baby instead of Arthur, 11, what?
I know.
I'll
crazy.
stick with my dogs.
Crazy. So that's a good one. Kunya's a good one.
Yeah.
And I had some beads that Helen Courtney gave me that I think are going to match perfectly, but not a full bag, so now I can get a couple of small ones to go with it and use those.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I know. So
I was also thinking, Stephen West, is it Dotted Rays?
Yeah, that could be quite good. It's not going to be too heavy, is it?
No. Well, I've got a beautiful skein. We went to Willfest. Well, one of the times we went to Willfest, and I got a beautiful skein of Sparkle Duck yarn in this beautiful green, and it was destined for Dotted Rays. But now I'm a bit sad because, well, you know the story.
I know. I really liked Heather.
Yeah, she was a bit mental in
She
the
was
best
toast
possible
mentally
way.
in a really lovely way. Like,
Yeah.
really, I really appreciated how she was different and
Yeah.
didn't care.
Yeah.
Just absolutely lovely. And her green yarns and blues, she dyed the most
Oh,
beautiful green
yeah.
and blue yarn.
It's like it is a greeny blue, like a sea green blue. It's beautiful.
I think you can't leave it in a cupboard, dude.
No, that's what I'm thinking. And it was destined for the dotted rays, so I think that might be my first cast on.
That would be a really nice one. That would be a nice one because then you can remember your holidays and it's like you've done something special with that one.
Yeah, I think so. It definitely needs to be used and be out in the world, not hiding in a drawer.
Yeah, I just feel sad I didn't buy more of her yarn.
I know.
When I had the chance, so.
But we can't dwell on things like that.
We can't. And I did have her in TGS 3 times because she is that much of a fave. Like, I really did like her yarn. So
her yarn is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Oh, man. It makes me sad.
I don't know. Well, this is it. It's why you shouldn't mess about knitting with yarn you don't like because you never know when you can not be able to knit with yarn anymore. So
precisely.
Knit the good yarn now.
Knit with a good
yarn. I have to bleep that out now. You know that.
Sorry.
I have a clean. Despite my occasional lapses into mal swears, I have a clean podcast.
I know.
That's okay.
I haven't sworn the whole time.
I'll find a comedy or something like that. I can put over it.
Get a really good one.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So you're going to take dotted rays.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts for your holiday knitting?
No, that was as far as I got, really. One of Lucy Haig's shawls, but it's mega complicated.
See,
I don't think that's holiday knitting
stuff. No. Although a Lush, like if you want to do the band for your Lush, that could be quite good.
I'm not knitting another Lush.
I'm totally knitting about 15 more Lushes.
You love that.
I do love it. It looks great on me. I have a hand dyed Lush, and it really looks awesome.
I really like how Jess crops all hers.
Yeah, she can do the crop thing, can't she?
Yeah. But yeah, the Lush really suits you.
Yeah.
No, knitting the ginormous Lush has put me off of Lushes.
Oh, yeah, but you did knit it about 5 sizes too big for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
But nice Polworth might go down a treat.
Maybe.
I'm knitting some blacker yarn. I've got a mohair blend. It's quite cheap actually. After slagging off commercial yarns, it was like $3.50 a ball, and it's a kind of greeny grey.
Oh, yum!
It's nice. It's nice. It's grey with like a green cast on it, and it's got Jacobs and mohair in it. Now the mohair is not the kind of mohair I'm used to using. I only use nice mohair, and it's a little bit scratchy.
Oh.
But it was $3.50 a ball, and you're not going to wear a Lush without something underneath it.
See, I get really warm, so I tend not to wear, like, I'll have a dress and then my cardigan, and I don't wear like high neck things. So yeah, it would be touching me. Oh, I couldn't deal with that. Sorry, Blacker.
I'm a reptile. I'm a total reptile. I just want to bake. I just want to be really warm all the time. If I could live under a little heat lamp, I would. I really would. I love being warm. So I'm quite happy to layer up and be even borderline sweaty to be warm enough. So
see, that's my problem. I don't like being sweaty.
No, it
stresses me out so much. Like, see, when it comes to winter, I don't know if other countries are the same, but you layer up to go outside because it's blooming freezing up here. So you put the multiple layers on, and then you go into like a shop and they've got their heating up full blast, so you're sweating and you feel really uncomfortable, and then you just want to leave as soon as possible. So shops, deal with that, please.
That is a thing in Scotland, I've got to say. That is a thing in Scotland that they do, that they put the heating on really high in winter.
Yeah. Just get your employees to put a jumper on. Jeez.
Yeah, it's not like you're not short of knitwear or anything, is it?
Well, exactly.
Plenty of wool.
My shop is at the perfect ice cold temperature during winter. I probably shouldn't say that.
I don't find it cold in your shop, but it was never super sweaty. Like whenever you got, especially in Edinburgh, because the tourists are all a little bit weak, and Edinburgh seems worse because it's full of tourists, and they're always like crying about how cold it is. It's not even really that cold.
No.
So they do have them up super high.
Yeah.
The temperature.
I mean, my shop is quite large. and has giant windows, and my heaters just don't keep up, basically. So it's not, I mean, it's warm. If it's cold, I normally have it warm enough, but it's not at that stage where you come in and you're just like,
it's not furnace face, like when you're just like, oh, and you've got to take everything off then.
Oh, I hate that. See, I don't like that, so no. But yeah.
So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that chat with Leona as well. Bit of holiday knitting talk with her, and extending that lovely time we get to spend with her to 3 episodes of the podcast, because she is really good fun. I very, very much enjoy Leona and having a chat with her. So it was good to spread her across 2 episodes. So double trouble there for you. It's like getting a Big Mac when you were expecting a Happy Meal burger. So all good, all good. So that's all we've got time for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'll be looking forward to chatting to you again next week. But until then, happy grafting, and I will speak to you again soon. Cheers. You've been listening to the Shiny Bees podcast. Full show notes for this episode can be found at the website at shinybees.com/121. Music for this episode very kindly provided from Adam and the Walter Boys with I Need a Drink, available on iTunes.
I feel a need